Black CEO denied first-class seat. 40 minutes later, airline in chaos. You must go to the back, sir. Only our premium passengers are permitted to use this area. As the cameras began to roll, the voice of the flight attendant reverberated throughout the cabin. Marcus Chen's demeanor remained the same when he looked up from his phone. He carried a battered leather briefcase and wore faded jeans and a grey hoodie. He exuded neither riches nor power. He was simply another traveler being told he didn't belong as far as everyone else could see. Sarah Mitchell, the woman standing over him, impatiently tapped her tablet. "Did you hear me, sir? You're in the incorrect area. Before continuing, I want to invite you to like the video and leave a comment from where you're watching this beautiful story." The boarding pass was displayed by Marcus, first class. Seat 1A. Sarah's gaze grew strained. "That must be an error. Show me your ID." 12 other passengers were using their phones nearby. The altercation was already being live-streamed by a Twitter user at Skywatcher. Have you ever witnessed a person's whole world transform in just 45 minutes? Because these black and real-life examples demonstrate how heartwarming tales can transform entire businesses. Above Gate 23, the departure board flashed red. In 37 minutes, the boarding of Flight 447 to Chicago was completed. Marcus's boarding pass was scrutinized by Sarah as if it were fake money. Jessica, her co-worker, came up from the galley. Jessica said, "Problem," loud enough for other people to hear. Sarah retorted, "This gentleman seems confused about his seat assignment." Her tone implied that Marcus was either dishonest or untrained. Marcus was still sitting with his briefcase at his feet and his seat belted in. "I recognize that there may be misunderstandings, ma'am. Please. Could you check your system?" Sarah swept her fingertips across her tablet. She shook her head, tapped it once more, and scowled. "Records indicate that you bought an economy ticket, sir. You must relocate to the appropriate coach seat." "That's not right," Marcus said. He showed her his mobile boarding permit after taking out his phone. Seat 1A in first class was paid for 3 weeks ago. In seat 2A, an old white man leaned forward. "Perhaps you could simply sit down, son." "There's no reason to stir controversy." Sarah gave a nod of approval. "Are you certain you didn't intend to reserve coach, sir? When people are unfamiliar with the booking procedure, they make these blunders." Like fog, the disdain hovered in the air. Marcus clenched his jaw almost imperceptibly. He took a platinum airline status card out of his briefcase and set it on the tray table. He claimed to have flown 340,000 miles with Atlantic Airways, 6 years in a row with platinum status. Sarah hardly gave it a look. "Those cards are now available online to everybody. Please collect your items and proceed to your designated seat, sir." Fingers slid quickly across Skywatcher's phone screen. "A black passenger on Atlantic Airways Flight 447 is being routinely degraded in real time. This discrimination from the Atlantic is absurd." In 2 minutes, 47 people retweeted the message. James Rodriguez, the captain, came out of the cockpit. At 52, his mere presence was enough to command respect. His silver hair was groomed to perfection. He wore his uniform with military accuracy. "What's going on?" Keeping his eyes off Marcus, he asked Sarah. "A passenger who is seated incorrectly refuses to relocate to the coach where he belongs." Rodriguez took a quick look at Marcus, to jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie. He made a snap judgment that was incorrect. "You're delaying departure, sir. Please take your proper seat right away." Calmly. Marcus looked up. "I'm in my proper seat, Captain 1A, first class. I've attached my ID, frequent flyer card, and boarding pass." None of them caught Rodriguez's attention. "I've been flying for 15 years, son. I can spot scammers and upgrade attempts." "Cool ground security, Sarah." The first-class occupants shuffled uneasily. A woman in 3B began using her phone to record. In 4A, a businessman frowned as he looked up from his laptop. Marcus took his phone out and started to record. For the record, Flight 447 is at 2:47 p.m. Despite possessing the required paperwork, I am being requested to vacate my paid first-class seat. Rodriguez said, "Put that phone away, sir. You're disturbing things." "I am recording discrimination," Marcus said calmly. She had Sarah on her radio already. "We require security at Gate 23, ground control. The passenger is not following the crew's directions." The man in 2A gave a headshake. "Buddy, just go to coach. You're making things more difficult than they have to be." However, the woman in 3B raised her voice. "Hold on, he displayed his boarding pass to you. Why do you not check it?" Sarah's cheeks flushed. "Please don't meddle, ma'am. It is obvious that this man bought an economy ticket and is attempting to obtain a complimentary upgrade." "How did you find out?" the woman said. "Experience," said Sarah abruptly. Marcus picked up the phone. His voice was low and the chat was short. "Yes, please begin without me as I'm running late. I'll take care of this myself." Rodriguez heard, "What should I handle? Who are you phoning, sir?" Marcus remained silent. He was recording everything he said and did on his phone. As her live stream gained popularity, her follower count at Skywatchers increased by 300. The comments came pouring in. How is this still occurring in 2025? File a lawsuit against them and document everything. The voice of the gate agent reverberated throughout the terminal. Flight 447's final boarding call is for Chicago. Please board right away. Everyone who is still traveling. 2 security guards came over. Despite having the same last name, Lisa Chen and Mike Santos, a 20-year veteran, are unrelated to Marcus. "What's wrong?" Santos inquired. Rodriguez gestured to Marcus, occupying the incorrect seat, being unruly, and refusing to get up. Santos surveyed the area. A well-dressed man, surrounded by passengers and crew with their phones out, sits quietly in first class. "Could you show me your boarding pass, sir?" Marcus gave it to him without objecting. After closely examining it and comparing it to Marcus' ID, Santos turned to face his radio. "This displays seat 1A in first class," Santos informed Rodriguez. "It's obviously a scam," Sarah said. "He's attempting to upgrade and con." Santos gave her a doubtful glance. "These boarding passes are straight from your system, ma'am. In what way would it be dishonest?" Sarah stumbled. "These individuals are skilled at manipulating the system." The words lingered in the atmosphere. Even others who had not been listening looked up. These individuals lacked subtlety. Marcus didn't move at all, but he looked into Santos' eyes. The security guard knew what those words meant because he had heard them before. "Would you mind getting off the plane for a minute, sir, to check with the gate agent?" Santos asked Marcus. The request was gently made and was reasonable. Marcus stood up after giving a nod. His phone buzzed as he picked up his briefcase. Before he closed it, a small text message flashed on the screen. One glance went to the woman in 3B. The board meeting was rescheduled to an emergency session in conference room A. Wondering what sort of emergency board meeting a coach passenger would be aware of, she scowled. Flight 447 was now listed as 23 minutes delayed on the departure board. Janet Williams, the ground supervisor, came at Gate 23 with deliberate steps. After 12 years with Atlantic Airways, she rose from luggage handler to supervisor. She took great satisfaction in managing challenging circumstances. She asked Santos what was causing the delay. He handed her Marcus's papers and said, "Passenger verification." Janet looked at the ID, boarding pass, frequent flyer card, and everything else with dramatic thoroughness. She glanced at the papers, then at Marcus, and back at the papers. "These seem to be in order, Mr. Chen. However, I believe it would be best if we moved you to coach for this flight because the staff is worried about your behavior." Marcus's tone did not change. "What conduct?" I was seated at my designated seat, calmly. You're arguing with the flight attendants. They said I was in the wrong seat when I was presenting documentation. Janet's face became stern. Disputes with me won't further your cause, sir. You have two options. Either take the following flight or your designated coach seat. You have those choices. Skywatcher's live stream has erupted back on the aircraft. The trending hashtag was discrimination by Atlantic Airways. Her viewership reached 1,500 and is still growing. She was providing live commentary. Now they ejected him from the aircraft. This man is being treated like a criminal, despite having a first-class ticket and presenting many types of identification. Does prejudice look like this in 2025? More comments came in than she could read. Keep this video as proof. What is his name? He requires legal counsel. The stock of Atlantic Airways will plummet. Find out who this guy is, please. Other flight passengers had gathered inside the terminal to observe. A number of them were recording. On TikTok, a teenage girl was streaming. The LinkedIn feed of a businessman was being updated. Marcus checked his watch. Maybe it was a habit. But Janet saw the cost. Incredibly costly. It's more costly than her monthly pay. I need your choice, sir. The next flight or the coach seat. Marcus inquired if he may talk to your district manager. Janet chuckled. The manager of the district. I am on duty as the senior supervisor, sir. Here, I'm in complete control. I know where you're coming from, Marcus said, but I want to bring this to your district manager's attention. Like everyone else, you have the option to file a complaint online. A number of first-class passengers had emerged to observe. Now known as Dr. Patricia Voss, the woman from 3B came forward. I apologize, but I was on that aircraft. This man sat on his chair silently. He displayed his ID, his boarding card, and everything else. What is the reason behind his removal? Janet faced her. This is between Mr. Chen and us, ma'am. Kindly take a seat again. I'm also a paying customer, Dr. Voss said. Additionally, I'm seeing what seems to be discrimination. She was joined by a first-class businessman. I witnessed the entire event. His paperwork were never thoroughly examined by the flight attendant. She simply thought he was sitting in the wrong chair. Janet sensed that things were getting out of hand. There were phones everywhere, and more folks were arriving. She had to take charge again. Sir, she addressed Marcus, I'll give you a coach seat, or you can get out of the airport. You have no other choice. Marcus took his phone out and called someone else. It was 47 seconds long. Most people couldn't hear his voice since it was so low. Dr. Voss, however, was close enough to capture pieces. Now in conference room A, urgent board meeting, Dr. Voss scowled. A meeting of the board. Marcus hung up and spoke to the assembled assembly. I'm sorry for the wait, ladies and gentlemen. I am aware that everyone wants to be in Chicago on schedule. His voice had changed, more powerful. The alteration was noticed by several passengers. Janet could feel a change. Who are you phoning, sir? My workspace. Simply, Marcus said, your office. Marcus pulled a business card holder out of his briefcase. He picked out a single card and gave it to Janet. Her face turned pale as she read it. Marcus Chen, Chen Industries, Chief Executive. In an attempt to see, the passengers pressed closer. Dr. Voss gasped as he read over Janet's shoulder. Oh, God, she muttered. The first-class businessman took out his phone and began searching Google. As he read, his eyes grew wide. He whispered, holy shit. Chen Industries has billions of dollars. The exchange was captured on Skywatcher's live stream. Hold on. Has somebody mentioned billions? What's going on? Chat. Chen Industries is who? Her audience was already doing their homework. Chen Industries recently revealed that their revenue for the year was $2.4 billion. They own about 847 businesses. This man isn't your average traveler. The lawsuit against Atlantic Airways is soon to be forgotten. The business card captivated Janet's attention. Her hands were trembling a little. "This doesn't change anything, Mr. Chen. You were being unruly." But suddenly there was no conviction in her voice. Marcus took another look at his watch. "Your HQ is going to call you in roughly 3 minutes. I advise you to respond to it." "What sort of call?" "The sort that your board of directors will give you." There were now perhaps 30 persons in the gathering. The issue was being managed by airport security, but the number of live streams was growing. There were now more than 2,000 tweets about discrimination against Atlantic Airways. It looked like Captain Rodriguez was agitated. "What's happening outside?" "We must leave," Santos quietly told him. As Rodriguez listened, his face transformed. "What is the CEO of?" Rodriguez inquired. Santos answered, "Chen Industries, large company with billions of dollars in sales." Rodriguez gave Marcus a fresh look. The trousers and hoodie no longer looked so casual. They appeared to be the attire of someone who didn't have to make an impression. Janet crackled on her radio. "Supervisor Williams, please get in touch with headquarters right away." Marcus glanced at her as he looked at his watch once more. "Just on time," he murmured softly. Dr. Voss took a step toward Marcus. "I apologize for what happened to you, sir. This is totally inappropriate." "Do, thank you," Marcus said. "However, this is no longer about me." "What are you saying?" Marcus surveyed the throng, the phones that were recording everything, and the airport security personnel attempting to calm a situation that had gotten out of hand. Making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else is the goal here. 3,000 people watched the Sky Watchers live stream. The story was beginning to gain traction with major news outlets. After being steady throughout the day, Atlantic Airways stock price fell 1.2% in the final 15 minutes. Once more, Janet's radio crackled. "Patricia Vance, CEO and Supervisor Williams, must talk to you right away." Janet glanced first at Marcus, then at the business card she was holding, and finally at the group of people who were filming everything. "It's going to get really interesting." To the businessman next to her, Dr. Voss whispered. Marcus took a folder out of his briefcase. Documents that would alter everything were contained therein. "There's something else you should know," he said, Janet. The audience leaned in, knowing that whatever happened next would be the turning point. A text buzzed through Marcus's phone. "The board is ready and waiting for your call." He glanced up at Sarah, who had joined them from the plane, Janet, and Captain Rodriguez. "Should we talk about this inside? For this chat, I believe you will want seclusion." The gate area had become a makeshift amphitheater. Travelers leaned against pillars, stood against windows, and sat on seats. The number of live feeds have increased. There were now 4,000 watchers at Skywatcher. At the same time, 3 other passengers were streaming. Marcus stood quietly in the middle, papers well organized on a nearby chair, his briefcase open. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice resonating clearly throughout the room. "I apologize for keeping you waiting. I'm aware that many of you have business to run, family to visit, and connections to make." With Patricia Vance's direct number on her phone screen, Janet Williams stood motionless. She still hadn't called. Marcus went on. "I think everyone deserves to understand what's really happening here before we resolve this situation." He opened a leather portfolio that he had taken out. A certificate of stock ownership was the first document. Chen Industries bought a 23% share in Atlantic Airways 6 months ago. Like a tangible force, the words struck the throng. Loud enough for everyone to hear, there were gasps, obscenities, and someone shouting, "No way!" Captain Rodriguez moved ahead. "That isn't feasible. I would have been aware of such a significant deal." Marcus gave him a composed glance. "You have 15 years of experience with Atlantic Airways, Captain Rodriguez. By the way, great safety record." I looked over your file. Rodriguez's expression turned pale. Have you looked over my file? Every important personnel file for the businesses in our investment portfolio is examined by Chen Industries. Typical due diligence. Sarah Mitchell, who had been skulking at the periphery of the gathering, became acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. She treated unfairly a person who essentially controlled over 25% of the airline. Dr. Voss lowered her phone a little while she was recording. Are you claiming to be a shareholder in Atlantic Airways, Mr. Chen? Marcus confirmed that it was 23%. Chen Industries is now the second largest stakeholder as a result. He took out another piece of paper. The fiscal year 2024 of Atlantic Airways, a total of $8.2 billion was made. $1.9 billion was invested by Chen Industries. The first-class businessman was scurrying around taking notes. This is amazing. In addition to being rich, this man is also one of the airline's owners. Stream was bursting with comments at Sky Watchers. The airline is owned by him. The greatest story twist ever is this one. What a mess Atlantic Airways is. In real time, someone is being fired. Once more, Marcus delved into his briefcase. You should have additional background information. He created the Atlantic Airways corporate account summary, a hefty folder. Chen Industries schedules about 847 flights with Atlantic Airways annually. We spend $1.2 million a year on flying with this airline. At last, Janet was able to express herself. I didn't know, Mr. Chen. You didn't, of course, Marcus interrupted softly. The point is that the way a consumer is treated shouldn't be influenced by their status or amount of money. It ought to be polite and consistent. He took out a number of sheets from the folder. My own account with Atlantic Airways, which has traveled 340,000 miles and held platinum status for 6 years in a row. I took 63 flights with this airline just last year. Captain Rodriguez stared at the papers as if blinking would cause them to vanish. There was no way of knowing, sir. That's precisely the issue, Captain, Marcus said. You assumed things about me based on how I looked. You never looked at my qualifications. You didn't check the facts before calling security. Sarah hardly raised her voice above a whisper. I apologize. I didn't realize Mr. Chen. Marcus looked at a document and remarked, Mitchell. After 8 years with Atlantic Airways, performance ratings were largely good. There are 2 consumer complaints about passengers of color in your file. Like a sword, the suggestion hung in the air. Dr. Voss took a step forward. Now, Mr. Chen, what will happen? Marcus checked his watch. Janet will receive another call from headquarters in roughly 90 seconds because Atlantic Airways, Chicago, is currently hosting an emergency board meeting. Janet's phone rang as if at the perfect moment. Marcus nodded to Patricia Vance, CEO, who appeared on the caller ID. You ought to put that on speaker. As Janet responded, her hands were trembling. Vance, Ms. Is Marcus Chen with you, Janet? There was tension in the CEO's voice. Indeed, ma'am. Now get him on the phone. Marcus took a step forward. Hi, Patricia. I just left an urgent board meeting, Marcus. What on earth is going on at Gate 23? The throng surged in. This was superior to any film. I'm traveling to Chicago on Flight 447, Patricia. My paid first-class seat was taken away from me, and I was denied service because of what I can only describe as racial prejudice. The other end of the call was silent. Then tell me you're kidding, please. Unfortunately, no. Several people have live-streamed the incident. On social media, it is trending. Over the past hour, your stock has dropped 1.4%. Christ Jesus. Marcus took his phone out and showed the audience the screen. There were several social media feeds that displayed the trending hashtag Atlantic Airways discrimination. Patricia, do you know what our shareholder agreement's clause 12.3 is? One more pause. The provision about substantial incidents. That's right. A governance review is triggered by discrimination against passengers, which is a material incident. Dr. Voss whispered to the businessman, "He's initiating legal procedures, not just complaining." Patricia's voice could be heard over the speaker. "Marcus, what are you in need of?" "First and foremost, I want your flight crew to realize that they have caused Atlantic Airways to face a serious legal and PR disaster." Captain Rodriguez was looking at the phone as if it were about to blow up. "Second, I require prompt remedial action that exemplifies Atlantic Airways' dedication to treating every traveler fairly. Anything you require." Marcus scanned the audience, taking in the phones that were still recording, Janet's pallid face, and Sarah, who appeared to be about to pass out. "Third, I want you to realize that this isn't about me, Patricia. It concerns the thousands of travelers who encounter prejudice each year but lack the means or standing to challenge it." Now there was silence among the throng. People were taking in what they were seeing, and even the live stream comments had paused. "Marcus, I'm giving you permission to do whatever you think is right. Complete power." Marcus gave a nod. "Thank you. In an hour, I'll have suggestions." After hanging up, he surveyed the gate area. He had 50 people staring at him. Thousands more were being streamed by several live streams. Marcus added, "There's one more thing you should know." He took a last piece of paper out of his suitcase. This one was unique, more formally designed, featuring numerous seals and signatures. A $500,000 anonymous donation was made to Atlantic Airways last year to support training on diversity and inclusion. He displayed the paper. "My foundation, the Chen Foundation, made the donation." The realization came as a shock. In fact, Sarah let out a loud gasp. "For more than a year, I've been working to assist this airline change its culture," Marcus added. "I witnessed directly today why that assistance is sorely needed." Through her live feed, Skywatcher's voice could be heard. "Are you getting this, chat? The airline discriminated against this individual because he was attempting to assist them. It's unbelievable." Marcus carefully and methodically closed his briefcase. "Shall we now talk about how to make sure this doesn't occur again?" Once more, Janet's phone rang. It was the legal department of Atlantic Airways this time. Now the real job was going to start. At the headquarters of Atlantic Airways, budget discussions and quarterly reviews were typically held in Conference Room A. It was now at the core of a business crisis. Patricia Vance was seated at the head of the mahogany table with her senior vice presidents, the company's legal staff, and 8 other board members. 3 streams were shown on the video wall in the room: the Twitter analytics dashboard that tracks Atlantic Airways discrimination, the live stream from Gate 23, and the stock chart that shows a gradual fall. Patricia gave the command to patch Mr. Chen through to the main screen. On the 75-inch screen, Marcus was shown standing quietly at the gate area with Janet Williams at his side. Phones were still recording. "And the passengers were still huddled together," Patricia remarked. "You have the floor, Marcus." Marcus had placed himself such that both sides of the discussion could be heard by the audience. The topic of a private settlement was not going to be discussed. This was going to be real-time transparency. "Patricia, thank you. I believe the board needs to fully comprehend the extent of what transpired here before we can talk about solutions." Sarah Mitchell, who had grudgingly joined the group at the gate podium, was indicated by him. "Would you mind sharing with the board what you said when you initially came up to me?" "Mr. Mitchell," Sarah's voice could hardly be heard, "I informed you that only premium passengers were allowed in that area." "Yes, even though I had a first-class boarding card in my possession. I also mentioned that anyone may obtain those cards online when I showed you my Platinum Frequent Flyer card." In Chicago, board member David Kim leaned forward. "What led you to believe that Mr. Chen's documents were fake?" "Ms. Mitchell, There was a lingering question. Sarah searched frantically for a way out of a reality that everyone was already aware of. Marcus responded on her behalf. "I will spare Miss Mitchell the trouble of responding. She assumed things based on how I looked. It is impossible for a black man dressed casually to be in first class." Patricia massaged her forehead. "What do you need right now, Marcus? We'll talk about solutions after I give the facts." Marcus took out his tablet and plugged it into the hotspot on his phone. He shared his screen with the conference room in a matter of seconds. Financial performance of Atlantic Airways, Q4 2024, 47.2 million travelers in total. Rating for customer satisfaction, 3.2 out of 5. 3.8 is the industry average. The board members were frantically taking notes. The Department of Transportation received discrimination complaints against Atlantic Airways in 2024, 147. That is 43% more than the average for the industry. Patricia had a serious expression. "We had no idea the numbers were that high, Marcus. Because the purpose of your complaint resolution system is to deter, not to promote, reporting." Another slide was brought up by Marcus. An analysis of Chen Industries' yearly travel expenditures, 1.2 minces for Atlantic Airways. American Airlines, $800,000, $650,000 for Delta. The ramifications were obvious. The biggest portion of a multi-million-dollar business travel budget was going to Atlantic Airways. Marcus went on to say that Chen Industries will be examining all vendor connections to make sure they are in line with our business principles in light of today's incident. Sarah Rodriguez, a board member, raised her voice. "What, in your opinion, would be an appropriate resolution, Mr. Chen?" Marcus glanced around the gate area where the live streams were still broadcasting and the passengers were still watching. First, those employees who participated in the discriminatory acts should be fired right away. The knees of Sarah Mitchell gave down a little. Captain Rodriguez shut his eyes. Second, within 30 days, all employees who interact with customers must receive thorough bias training. Patricia agreed and nodded. Third, the creation of a third-party organization-managed anonymous reporting system for instances of prejudice. I concurred as well. Fourth, the establishment of a $500,000 fund for programs promoting diversity and inclusion. The board members looked at each other. Although substantial, $500,000 was not disastrous. Fifth, Marcus added, was Atlantic Airways' public apology for systematic shortcomings in providing fair treatment to all passengers. Patricia hesitated. "Marcus, we might face serious legal repercussions if we apologized in public. Patricia, you already face serious legal liability. This chat is being watched live by about 4,000 people. Over the past 2 hours, your stock has decreased by 2.1%. You have to decide between an uncontrolled crisis and regulated transparency." Patricia heard legal counsel whisper something in her ear. Grimly, she nodded. She declared that a condition had been accepted. Applause erupted from the gate crowd. The celebration emojis flashed in Skywatcher's comment area. Marcus wasn't done, though. "There's another prerequisite," he stated. There was silence in the conference room. "Real-time implementation is what I desire, nor future obligations, nor pledges." Within 72 hours, the changes were put into effect. VP of Operations. Michael Torres objected, saying that was not possible. Marcus interjected, "Union agreements, legal reviews." "Your system updates. I've looked over your operating capabilities, Michael. You can rearrange your entire system in 6 hours when weather emergencies need quick scheduling adjustments." Patricia reclined back in her chair and said, "When you have the will, you have the way." "What precisely do you require in 72 hours?" Marcus's tablet displayed another document. Within a day, Captain Rodrigo and Miss Mitchell were fired. Within 48 hours, new training materials were created and made available. Within 72 hours, the anonymous reporting system will be up and running. Marcus stared straight into the camera, asking if we could make that deadline. After that, Chen Industries will sell off our shares in Atlantic Airways and advise our network of affiliated businesses to follow suit. It was a deadly threat. Not only was Chen Industries a significant investor, they have ties to numerous other companies that together accounted for millions of dollars worth of yearly trip expenditures. Mr. Chen, how do we know these changes will be sufficient? Inquired board member Jennifer Walsh. You don't, said Marcus. However, to monitor your progress, you will have quarterly assessments with independent auditors, public reporting, and complete openness. Patricia surveyed the conference space. The members of her board were nodding. Notes were being scrawled by the legal team. The stock price was still falling. We agree to all terms, Marcus. At the gate, the crowd exploded once more. Tears were being wiped away by several passengers. Incredulous, Dr. Voss was shaking her head. Marcus wasn't finished yet, though. There's one last component, he stated, individual responsibility. Patricia's face became tense. What are you saying? Diversity and inclusion measures ought to be linked to executive compensation. Patricia, let's start with your remuneration. There was complete silence in the conference room. 20% of executive compensation are linked to quantifiable gains in outcomes related to equitable treatment, quarterly evaluations, and public announcements. Patricia gazed for a long time at the screen. 8 board members gathered around the conference table to await her answer. At last, she responded, "Agreed." Marcus gave a nod. "After that, we have a plan for the future." He took another glance around the gate area. "I apologize once more for the wait. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can see, though, that there are instances when delays are necessary for a bigger reason." The audience erupted in prolonged cheers. Janet Williams took the lead. "Now what happens, Mr. Chan?" For the first time since the incident started, Marcus grinned. "Let's fix the system now, Janet. Additionally, we guarantee that each traveler is handled with respect and decency." He turned to face the camera again. "Patricia, I should receive an email with the implementation timeline in 4 hours. She said, you'll have it in 2. Marcus grabbed his briefcase and shut down his tablet. "Now, I think that 45 minutes ago was when Flight 447 was meant to take off. Should we transport these travelers to Chicago?" The change happened instantly. Janet was giving her employees instructions. Airport security was escorting Sarah Mitchell away. Supervisors were reviewing Captain Rodriguez's credentials. They were already assembling a new flight crew. Skywatcher addressed her live stream audience and chat room in a different address. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen. An entire airline's regulations were just altered in real time by one man." Dr. Voss glanced over from 3B as Marcus finally boarded his flight in first class. "Seat 1A. And that was amazing, Mr. Chen. How did you manage to be so composed during all of that?" Marcus took a seat and turned on his laptop. "Anger is fleeting, but systemic change is permanent, Dr. Voss. Instead of just venting my displeasure, I would rather create something enduring." It took 53 minutes for the plane to push back from the gate. To Chicago, however, it was transporting more than just passengers. The promise of transformation was with it. Marcus Chen was sitting in his Chicago office 71 hours later, going over Atlantic Airways' implementation reports. On his mahogany desk, his aide, Maria Santos, had organized the papers chronologically. Maria claimed that the termination letters were executed yesterday. Captain Rodriguez and Sarah Mitchell were fired for good reason. Janet Williams will have to go through required sensitivity therapy after being demoted to training coordinator. Marcus looked over the paperwork and nodded. How about the protocols for replacement? This morning, new crew training resources became live. Within the next 30 days, all Atlantic Airways staff will finish an 8-hour course on prejudice recognition. At 6 in the morning, the anonymous reporting system became live. A news alert rang on his phone. Following a prompt anti-discrimination response, Atlantic Airways, stock rises, 3.2% increase in shares. Prompt action had been well received by the market. Businesses that promptly resolved issues, rather than allowing them to fester, were valued by investors. That morning, Patricia Vance had made an appearance on CNBC to announce the Dignity in the Skies program. In 6 hours, the interview had been seen 847,000 times. She had addressed the camera directly, saying that Mr. Chen's experience was unacceptable. However, his attitude demonstrated to us how to use a setback as a springboard for significant improvement. The first complaint had already been entered into the anonymous reporting system. In Denver, a passenger on aircraft 892 reported that a ground crew member had treated them unfairly. Within hours, not weeks, a third-party firm was looking at the issue. There was a video call coming in on Marcus's computer. On film, Patricia Vance seemed much more at ease than she had 3 days prior. I wanted to personally deliver the first quarterly report to you, Marcus. She displayed a thorough dashboard of stats on her screen. Within 3 days, there was a 67% decrease in discrimination complaints. Surveys of customer satisfaction reveal a noticeable improvement. Most significantly, 12 employees have proactively reported instances of bias they have observed. Marcus reclined on his seat. Patricia, that's the true triumph, when workers are encouraged to voice their opinions. 6 additional airlines have requested the training program. Through a non-profit, we are licensing it, and the money raised will go toward diversity scholarships. Fantastic. How about the measures for executive compensation? Patricia grinned. The board unanimously agreed to attach 20% of all C-suite bonuses to results related to diversity and inclusion. Next month is the first quarterly review. Marcus displayed his own dashboard of metrics. Chen Industries kept careful tabs on their vendor ties. He affirmed that Atlantic Airways is once again our favorite airline partner. This quarter, Chen Industries will spend 15% more on travel. That's fantastic news. I must inquire. Marcus, how did you determine which levers to pull? Marcus thought about the query. I've experienced discrimination in the past, told Patricia. However, I have also spent 20 years in boardrooms. I am aware of how businesses make choices. Aligning commercial incentives with moral imperatives is crucial. According to Patricia, the entire affair has been turned into a case study for Harvard Business School. In real time, they are referring to it as stakeholder activism. Marcus hung up and went to his office window that looked out over Lake Michigan. He was reminded of his affection for Chicago by the Vista, a city created by outsiders and immigrants who don't accept boundaries. Dr. Patricia Voss from Flight 447 called him. I hope it's okay to call you Mr. Chen. The website of your foundation provided me with your number. How can I help you, Dr. Voss? Not at all. Dr. Voss stated, I wanted to let you know that what you did motivated me to take action in my own workplace. At Northwestern Memorial, I am in charge of emergency medicine. Bias in patient care has been a concern for us as well. Last week, I made our board aware of your Atlantic Airways case. Marcus grinned. How did they react? For instances of bias, we are putting in place a comparable anonymous reporting system. Additionally, all employees must finish unconscious bias training. Your strategy, which focused on facts and methodical transformation rather than personal responsibility, struck a deep chord. That's precisely what must occur, Marcus said. A single incident serves as a trigger for more significant transformation. It is known as the Chen Protocol in the medical profession, promoting systemic change as opposed to merely punishing individuals by using documented instances of prejudice. Marcus looked over the larger impact numbers his team had gathered after Dr. Voss hung up. In addition to being utilized 47,000 times on social media, the hashtag #DignityInSkies inspired 12 similar projects at other transportation businesses. A program for bias training had been announced by Greyhound Bus Lines. A chief diversity officer had been appointed by Amtrak. Systems for anonymous reporting had been put in place by 3 large hotel companies. A stack of letters from travelers who had seen similar discrimination was handed in by his assistant. Every letter told a narrative, expressed gratitude to Marcus for raising his voice, and many of them contained records of their own experiences. One letter was very noticeable. It came from Angela Thompson, a young black lady who had just received her MBA. My experience on United Flight 237 last month was nearly the same as yours, Mr. Chen, but I lacked your platform and resources. I simply put up with it and made a complaint that never got resolved. I learned from watching your live feed that bigotry need not go unpunished. I'm currently documenting systematic unfairness in airline treatment with the ACLU. I appreciate you demonstrating that change is achievable. Angela's letter was added by Marcus to an expanding file. Her case would eventually become a part of a bigger class action lawsuit that would drive changes across the industry. Reforms at Atlantic Airways were not the only indicator of success. It was the reverberation of a whole industry. 3 months later, new federal regulations mandating that airlines monitor and disclose discrimination complaints to the public were released by the Department of Transportation. Following the incident that led to the laws, they were dubbed the Atlantic Airways Rules. Michael Rodriguez, the transportation secretary and unrelated to the fired captain, called Marcus. Your Atlantic Airways case, Mr. Chen, gave us the political impetus we required to enact thorough anti-discrimination laws. Instead of waiting for government regulations, 6 significant airlines have already voluntarily implemented your suggested procedures. By providing financial support for travelers who are subjected to discrimination, the Chen Foundation has broadened its mission to include equality in transportation. They had assisted 43 instances involving ride-sharing services, transit companies, and airlines in just 6 months. Marcus thought about the first time Sarah Mitchell told him to go to the back of the plane a lot. Millions of travelers have been impacted by the systemic change that was sparked by that one instance of prejudice. However, the most fulfilling result was individual. Marcus had taken Atlantic Airways Flight 447 on the same route and in the same kind of aircraft last month. He was greeted with true respect by the flight attendant, a young black man named David. "We are honored to have you fly with us today, Mr. Chen. Is there anything I can do to improve the comfort of your flight?" Marcus had observed the variety of passengers in the first-class compartment. Everybody is handled with the same professionalism and respect, regardless of their age, race, or fashion sense. You're already doing everything flawlessly, David. That was the true triumph, not the rebound of the stock price, the media attention, or the improvements in corporate policy. The basic idea was that the next traveler who resembled Marcus, or didn't, would be greeted with respect. The change was finished. The system was altered. Marcus Chen gave the keynote speech at the National Civil Rights Museum's annual Transportation Equality Summit in Memphis 2 years after Flight 447. There were 800 people in the auditorium, more seats than the government representatives, civil rights attorneys, campaigners and airline executives. Marcus, however, was able to observe the millions of people viewing the live video. He told the gathering that violence is not necessary for change. Lawsuits, demonstrations, or public humiliation are not necessary. Leverage, documentation, and methodical thought are necessary. He selected his first slide, which was a graph displaying accusations of discrimination against all of the major airlines. Not because prejudice vanished overnight, but rather because airlines put in place measures to stop it. The number of airline discrimination complaints has decreased by 71% since the Atlantic Airways incident. Beginning in late 2025 and extending into 2026 and 2027, the graph displayed a sharp decrease. This is the result of altering systems rather than only penalizing people. Sarah Mitchell, the former flight attendant who had started the whole thing, was among the audience. She had received intensive training on bias after being fired from Atlantic Airways, and she was now employed as a diversity consultant, assisting other businesses in avoiding the same mistakes she had. During the Q&A, she held up her hand. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, Mr. Chen. On Flight 447, I worked as a flight attendant." There was a whisper in the audience. This was not what was expecting. Marcus remarked, "Thank you for being here, Sarah," with warmth. "I wanted to apologize once more in public. Above all, though, I wanted to express my gratitude. My life was revolutionized by your reaction. I can now see how my unconscious prejudices do harm to others. I've been improving myself for the past 2 years." The audience exploded in cheers. This was the true strength of methodical change. It might turn offenders into supporters. Sarah, this movement requires your bravery in owning up to your mistakes and trying to keep others from making them. Marcus selected his last slide, which featured a picture of Angela Thompson, the young lady who had written to him following her own encounter with bigotry. In order to get a historic settlement against United Airlines, Angela Thompson employed documentation and legal advocacy. 47,000 airline workers nationwide received funding for bias training as a result of that settlement. As Angela took the stage, the crowd stood and cheered. Angela's instance demonstrated that you can affect change without being a CEO or a significant stakeholder. All you have to do is demand accountability and be prepared to document injustice. Marcus's gaze was fixed on the live stream camera. These heartwarming tales serve as a reminder that when regular people reject discrimination as the norm, change occurs. He stopped, allowing the words to sink in. And when we document injustice systematically, when we demand accountability from institutions, and when we use our economic power strategically, everyone watching has either been the victim of unfair treatment themselves or seen it happen to others. Your tales are important, your documentation is important, personal stories, pledges to take action, and sentiments of thanks were all over the live stream chat. If you have seen discrimination in transit, keep a record, report it, and share your personal experiences, because the basis for systemic change is these life stories and black stories. Marcus ended with a straightforward question. Don't stand by and watch injustice occur. Don't just feel sorry for yourself. Take action. Make use of the resources we have created. Utilize the systems we have established. Assist us in establishing a world in which everyone travels with respect. The website and reporting resources of the Transportation Equality Foundation were shown on the screen. Distribute this video. Mention these resources to your friends. Sign up to receive updates on our work. We can make sure that what happened on Flight 447 was the last time, not simply another incident, if we work together. When 150,000 people watched the live stream, the applause lasted for 3 whole minutes. Change had spread like wildfire.